The fluorescent lights in the executive bathroom hummed like dying insects. Amina pushed her cleaning cart through the doorway, the wheels squeaking against marble floors that cost more than her entire village back home. 3 in the morning. The emir's private office building stood empty, except for security guards and the cleaning crew. This was her favorite shift. No executives watching her like she might steal the gold-plated faucet fixtures. No secretaries leaving passive-aggressive notes about missed spots. Just her, the silence, and the satisfaction of making something dirty clean again. She'd worked this route for 2 years, knew every corner, every stubborn stain, every place where the marble grout needed extra attention. The executive bathroom on the 15th floor was always pristine. The djinn didn't sweat, didn't shed, barely left evidence they'd existed at all. But the emir insisted on daily cleaning anyway, something about maintaining standards. Amina pulled on her rubber gloves and reached for the disinfectant. That's when she heard it. A sound so soft she almost missed it beneath the fluorescent hum. A whimper. Small. Frightened. Coming from the last stall. Her heart kicked against her ribs. In 2 years, she'd never encountered anyone during the night shift. The building should be empty, should be silent, should be safe. She moved toward the stall, her footsteps careful on the wet floor. "Hello?" Her voice echoed off the tile. "Is someone there?" Another whimper, then a cough. Wet and painful, the sound of someone drowning from the inside. Amina pushed the stall door open. A child lay crumpled on the floor, his small body pressed against the cold tile. He couldn't have been older than 10. Dark hair fell across a face that was too pale, even for a djinn. His lips had a bluish tint, and his chest rose and fell in rapid, shallow breaths. But it was his eyes that stopped her, wide and dark, and filled with the kind of terror that transcends age, the terror of a child who knows something is very wrong, but doesn't have words for it. "Oh, sweetheart." Amina dropped to her knees, her cleaning supplies forgotten. She reached for the child, her hands gentle on his small shoulders. "What happened? Are you hurt?" The child's mouth moved, but no sound came out. His hands clutched his stomach, fingers digging into his expensive shirt, a shirt embroidered with silver thread, the kind of detail Amina had seen only once before, on the young prince in the photographs that hung in the building's lobby. Prince Rashid, the emir's only son. Ice flooded Amina's veins. This wasn't just any child, this was royalty, and he was dying on a bathroom floor while she was the only one here to help. "Stay with me," she said, keeping her voice steady even as panic clawed at her throat. "I'm going to help you." She pulled out her phone to call security, but her eyes caught on something else. The boy's fingers. They were stained, a deep reddish purple that looked almost black under the fluorescent lights. The stains spread up his wrists, following his veins like dark rivers beneath pale skin. Amina's phone slipped from her fingers, clattering on the tile. She knew that stain, had seen it once before, 6 years ago, on her daughter's hands as she lay in a hospital bed, her small body failing despite everything the doctors tried. "Nightshade poison," Amina whispered. The words tasted like ash. "Belladonna toxin, modified strain." The prince's eyes found hers, a question in that gaze. "How do you know?" "Because it killed my daughter." Amina's hands trembled as she grabbed her phone again. "But I know what you need. I know how to save you." She dialed security, her mind already racing through memories she'd tried to bury. Her daughter, Aisha, 7 years old, had been poisoned during a festival in their village, a case of mistaken identity, the authority said later. Someone had meant to poison a jinn official, but hit a human child instead. By the time they'd identified the toxin, by the time they'd found the antidote, it was too late. Aisha died holding Amina's hand, her small fingers stained that same terrible purple. But Amina had learned everything she could afterwards, had studied the toxin until she understood it better than the doctors who'd failed to save her daughter, had memorized the antidote protocol, the timing, the dosage adjustments, not because she thought she'd ever use it, but because understanding was the only way to survive the grief. "This is Amina Hassan, cleaning crew, 15th floor executive bathroom. I found Prince Rashid. He's been poisoned. Nightshade derivative. You need to get medical here now, and I need activated charcoal, milk thistle extract, and atropine immediately." The security guard's voice crackled with confusion. "Ma'am, how do you—" "I know what I'm talking about." Amina's voice cracked. "He has maybe 20 minutes before the toxin reaches his heart. You want to explain to the emir why you wasted time questioning the cleaning lady instead of getting the medical supplies?" She heard shouting on the other end, running footsteps. "Good." Amina turned back to the prince. His breathing had become more labored. The purple stain had spread past his elbows now. She pulled off her jacket and bundled it under his head, then grabbed paper towels and wet them in the sink. "Stay with me," she murmured, placing the cool towels on his forehead. "I know you're scared. I know it hurts, but you're going to be okay. I promise." The boy's hand moved weakly, reaching for hers, Amina's calloused fingers wrapping around his small, cold ones. The purple stain marked both their hands now, a connection written in poison and grief and desperate hope. "My name is Amina, and I'm not going to let you die. Not like her." Her voice broke. She swallowed hard. "Not like her. Not again." The prince's eyes stayed locked on hers, trusting her, this stranger in a cleaning uniform who'd found him at his most vulnerable, who claimed to know things doctors didn't, who looked at him not like royalty, but like someone's child who needed saving. Outside, sirens began to wail. The bathroom transformed into chaos within seconds. Security guards burst through the door, followed by medical personnel in pristine white uniforms. They carried emergency equipment that gleamed under the fluorescent lights. Defibrillators, oxygen tanks, cases full of supplies Amina couldn't identify. The head physician, a tall djinn with silver hair and centuries of authority in his bearing, immediately took command. "Everyone back," he ordered, kneeling beside the prince. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, checking pulse, examining eyes, assessing vitals. "What happened here?" "Nightshade derivative poisoning," Amina said, still holding Rashid's hand. "Modified belladonna toxin. He needs activated charcoal, milk thistle extract, and atropine in precise doses. The timing is critical." The physician's eyes cut to her, sharp, dismissive. "And you are—" "The person who found him. The person who knows what this is. Your cleaning staff." Not a question, a categorization. His gaze swept over her uniform, her rubber gloves still on one hand, the bucket and mop abandoned by the stall. "Step aside, let medical professionals handle this." Amina didn't move. "I watched this toxin kill my daughter 6 years ago. I know the progression, I know the treatment window, and I know if you waste time doing standard jinn poison protocols, he'll be dead in 15 minutes. "That's quite enough," the physician nodded to a security guard. "Remove her." "No." The word came from the prince, barely a whisper, more breath than sound, but everyone heard it. Rashid's fingers tightened on Amina's hand. His dark eyes moved between her and the doctor, pleading. The physician hesitated. In jinn culture, a royal's wishes carried weight, even when that royal was a child struggling to breathe. "Your Highness, you're not in a position to make medical decisions right now." Listen to her. Each word cost the prince visible effort. His face had gone gray now, the blue tint spreading from his lips to his cheeks. Amina met the physician's eyes. "The modified strain has a protein compound that standard jinn antidotes can't break down. It's designed specifically to target jinn physiology. Every minute you spend doubting me is a minute closer to cardiac arrest." She leaned forward, her voice dropping but losing none of its intensity. "So you can waste time verifying my credentials, or you can give me what I need and save his life." The silence stretched. Medical staff exchanged uncertain glances, security guards shifting, hands near weapons, unsure whether this cleaning woman represented a threat or solution. The bathroom's fluorescent hums seemed deafening. Then another voice cut through the tension. Give her what she's asking for. A woman in a sharp suit strode through the doorway. Amina recognized her from the executive floor. Layla Hassan, the emir's private secretary, the kind of person who made decisions in milliseconds and never apologized for them. She carried a leather medical bag, which she handed to Amina without hesitation. I raided the emergency pharmacy on the way up. Activated charcoal, milk thistle, atropine. Whatever else is in there, you're welcome to it. Ms. Hassan, this is highly irregular, the physician protested. The emir's son is turning purple on a bathroom floor. Nothing about this situation is regular. Layla's voice could cut glass. She stays. She treats him. You observe and assist as needed. If she's wrong, we still have you as backup. If she's right, you're going to learn something tonight. Amina didn't wait for further permission. She opened the bag with shaking hands, relief flooding through her at the sight of the supplies. Everything she'd asked for, plus more. Syringes, IV equipment, sterile gloves. Someone in that pharmacy had taken her seriously. I need him on his back, elevated 30 degrees, Amina instructed, her voice steadier now that she had purpose. Purpose was easier than memory. Action was easier than memory. And I need someone to hold a light. His pupils are going to tell me if the toxin has reached his central nervous system yet. 2 guards moved to help, lifting the prince carefully and positioning him against the tiled wall. Someone produced a flashlight. Amina pulled on the sterile gloves, her movements automatic. She'd done this in her dreams 1,000 times, saved Aisha, gone back to that hospital room and done everything right instead of standing helpless while doctors failed her. This time would be different. Rashid, I need you to look at me, she said softly, holding the light. I know it's hard, but keep your eyes open. The prince struggled to comply. His eyelids fluttered, wanting to close, but he fought. Brave kid. His pupils were still responsive, constricting in the light. Good. They had time. Not much, but enough. Amina pulled out the activated charcoal first. This is going to taste terrible, she warned, but it will bind to the poison in your stomach and keep it from spreading further. Can you swallow for me? Rashid nodded weakly. She supported his head, bringing the suspension to his lips. He gagged on the first sip. The taste was wretched, chalky, and bitter, but he forced it down. Then another, another. Amina watched his throat work with each swallow, counting doses in her head. Aisha hadn't been able to keep the charcoal down, had vomited it back up, wasting precious minutes. But Rashid was older, stronger. He managed it. Good. So good. Amina set the empty container aside and reached for the IV supplies. Now I need to get medicine into your bloodstream. You'll feel a pinch. The prince's eyes tracked her movements, trusting, the same way Aisha trusted right up until the end, right until the moment the monitors went flat and Amina's world shattered into pieces she'd never quite managed to put back together. Focus. Not then, now. Amina found a vein in Rashid's arm, made harder because jinn veins ran cooler and deeper than human ones, and inserted the IV catheter. Her hands didn't shake, couldn't afford to shake. She attached the line and began the milk thistle infusion, adjusting the flow rate based on his size and the toxin's progression. The milk thistle will protect his liver while we flush the toxin, she explained, aware that the physicians were watching her every move. Let them watch. Let them learn. But the real key is the atropine timing. Amina prepared the atropine with hands that performed this ritual only in nightmares. The syringe felt foreign and familiar, like picking up a language you'd once spoken fluently but thought you'd forgotten. She drew up the medication, checked the dosage twice, then checked it again. There was no room for error, not with this poison, not with this child. Atropine counters the effects on the nervous system, she explained, falling into the clinical language that once had been her armor against grief. The toxin causes excessive salivation, bronchial secretions, slow heart rate. Without atropine, he drowns in his own fluids, or his heart stops, but too much causes dangerous heart racing and hyperthermia. The dosage has to be perfect. The physician leaned closer, his centuries-old skepticism wavering. How do you know all this? Amina met his eyes. Because I sat in a hospital room for 18 hours, reading every medical journal, every toxicology report, every case study I could access, while my daughter died. Because after she was gone, I spent 3 years studying poison protocols, taking online courses, memorizing algorithms, learned everything those doctors knew and everything they should have known, not because I thought I'd ever use it, but because I needed to understand, needed to believe that knowing could have made a difference. She adjusted the milk thistle drip. The terrorist who made the poison was never caught. He targeted 3 other Jinn officials over the next year. 2 Jinn died, 1 human child. Different villages, same toxin. Eventually, the trail went cold, but the toxin is still out there. Someone still has the formula. Rashid's hand moved weakly, reaching toward Amina. She took it immediately, her fingers wrapping around his small, cold ones. The purple staining had stopped spreading. Good sign. The charcoal was working. "You saved me," the prince whispered. His voice was raspy, damaged from the toxin's effects, but growing stronger. "You knew what the doctors didn't." "I knew because I failed before," Amina said simply. "Sometimes the worst moments teach us what we need for the next crisis. I just wish—" She stopped herself. Couldn't say it out loud. Wished Aisha had been the one saved. Wished this knowledge had come in time for her daughter instead of someone else's child. The young nurse squeezed Amina's shoulder briefly, understanding passing between them, without words. Every medical professional had cases that haunted them, people they couldn't save, knowledge that came too late. "The secondary wave," the physician said, bringing focus back to the present. "What are we watching for specifically?" Amina pulled her mind back from memory. "Rising liver enzymes first. They'll spike within 3 hours if his liver is taking damage. Kidney function indicators will tell us about renal involvement. But the real danger is heart rhythm problems. The toxin damages heart muscle tissue. Even with treatment, there can be lasting effects." Lasting effects, Layla's voice sharpened. Depending on dosage and how long the toxin was in his system, Prince Rashid might have permanent cardiac issues, might need medication, might need monitoring. Amina met Rashid's eyes, keeping her voice gentle. "But you'll be alive. That's what—" The helicopter arrived 37 minutes later. Amina heard it before she saw it. The distinctive thud of rotor blades cutting through the pre-dawn darkness. The bathroom had become a makeshift medical center. Equipment spread across every available surface. Medical staff rotating in shifts to monitor the prince's vitals. Rashid had fallen into an uneasy sleep, his small body finally relaxing as the immediate danger passed. But Amina kept watch, kept checking his IV line, his pulse, the monitors that beeped steady reassurance into the antiseptic-scented air. The emir arrived like a storm system. Amina felt him before she saw him, the air pressure in the room changing as centuries of power compressed into one man entered the executive bathroom. Emir Tariq was younger than she'd expected from the formal portraits in the lobby, maybe 500 years old instead of 1,000. Dark hair shot through with silver at the temples, eyes the color of winter ice that swept the room and landed on his son with an expression that transformed his entire face. Terror, raw and undisguised. The same terror Amina had worn in that hospital room 6 years ago. "Rashid!" The emir's voice cracked on his son's name. He was across the room in an instant, dropping to his knees beside the makeshift gurney where Rashid slept. His hands hovered over the prince, wanting to touch, but afraid of disrupting the medical equipment. "What happened? Is he—" "He's stable, Your Excellency," the head physician said quickly. But the situation was critical. Prince Rashid was poisoned with a modified nightshade derivative. Without immediate intervention, he would have died. The emir's eyes found the purple staining on his son's hands and arms, his jaw clenched, muscles jumping beneath pale skin. Who did this? We don't know yet. Security is reviewing footage. Layla stepped forward, tablet in hand, calm in the face of royal fury. But, Your Excellency, there's something you should know about who saved him. Tariq's gaze finally landed on Amina. She'd stepped back when he entered, making herself small against the bathroom wall. She still wore her cleaning uniform, still had rubber gloves tucked into her belt, still looked exactly like what she was, building maintenance who'd stumbled into something far above her station. This is Amina Hassan, Layla continued. She found the prince and identified the poison. She administered the treatment that saved his life. The emir's eyes narrowed. Your medical staff couldn't... No, Your Excellency. Amina kept her voice steady. I clean offices. I was working the night shift when I found your son. A cleaning woman diagnosed and treated a poison that's killed trained physicians? Skepticism and something else, hope maybe, warred in his expression. Amina had told the story once tonight already. It didn't get easier with repetition. My daughter was murdered with the same poison 6 years ago. I learned everything about it afterward. When I saw the symptoms, I recognized them. The emir studied her for a long moment. His eyes were the kinds that missed nothing, that weighed and measured and calculated every angle. Amina had seen that look before on security footage and news broadcasts, whenever the emir made decisions that affected entire territories. But up close, she could see something else beneath the calculation. Grief understood. Grief recognized its own kind. Your daughter, he said quietly. The doctors couldn't save her. They didn't know what they were dealing with until it was too late. Amina met his eyes steadily. I made sure I would know if I ever saw it again. Tariq turned back to his son. His hand finally made contact, brushing dark hair away from his forehead with a gentleness that contrasted sharply with his fearsome reputation. The prince stirred at the touch, eyelids fluttering. Papa. Rashid's voice was barely audible. I'm here. The emir's voice gentled immediately. I'm here, son. You're safe now. The cleaning lady saved me. Rashid's eyes opened, finding Amina across the room. She knew what the doctors didn't. She held my hand and promised I wouldn't die. Tariq followed his son's gaze back to Amina. The calculation in his expression shifted, softened into something closer to gratitude, mixed with a parent's desperate relief. Then I owe you a debt I can never repay. I don't want payment. Amina's voice came out rougher than intended. I just didn't want another child to die from this poison if I could prevent it. Another child already died, Tariq said softly. Yours. And yet you saved mine anyway. The weight of that statement hung in the air. No one moved. Amina felt tears prick her eyes but refused to let them fall. Not here, not now. Later, in her small apartment with her shrine of photographs and Aisha's favorite stuffed rabbit, she could break, but not in front of the emir and his entire medical staff. The secondary wave, the head physician interjected, perhaps sensing the emotional intensity needed redirection. Miss Hassan warned us about organ damage that occurs hours after initial stabilization. We're monitoring closely, but she suggested we should be prepared for cardiac complications. The emir's expression hardened again. Explain. The toxin damages heart muscle tissue, Amina said, falling back into clinical language because it was safer than emotion. Even with treatment, there may be permanent effects. Prince Rashid might need ongoing medication to regulate heart rhythm. He'll definitely need monitoring. For how long? Amina hesitated. Potentially for life, Your Excellency. The damage depends on dosage and exposure time. We won't know the full extent until we can run comprehensive cardiac tests. The emir's hand tightened on his son's shoulder. Whatever he needs, he'll have it. The best specialists, the most advanced treatments. His eyes found Amina again. And you. I want you involved in his care. Your Excellency, I'm not a doctor. You're the person who saved him when doctors failed. You're the expert on this specific toxin. Tariq's tone left no room for argument. I'm hiring you as a medical consultant. You'll work with my personal physicians. Name your price. Amina opened her mouth to protest, but Layla was already typing on her tablet. "I'll have contracts drawn up by morning. Salary commensurate with senior medical staff, full benefits, housing if needed." "I have a job," Amina said weakly. "I clean buildings." "You had a job," the emir corrected. "Now you have a different one. My son is alive because of you. Whatever resources you need to keep him that way, they're yours." The monitors beeped steadily. Rashid's chest rose and fell in rhythm with the IV drip. The medical staff stood frozen, watching this impossible scene, a cleaning woman being elevated to royal consultant before their eyes. Amina looked at the prince, at the purple stainings fading from his small hands, at the rise and fall of his chest that meant he was still breathing, still alive, still fighting. She thought about Aisha, about the hospital room where she'd held her daughter's hand while the monitors flatlined, about the years of study that followed, the obsessive research, the desperate need to understand. This was why. This moment. This child. "Okay," Amina said finally. "I'll do it." The secondary wave hit 4 hours and 17 minutes after Amina had first found the prince. She'd been dozing in a chair someone had brought to the bathroom-turned-medical center, her body exhausted but her mind refusing to fully rest. The monitors had been beeping steadily, reassuringly, lulling everyone into the false sense of security she'd warned them about. Then the pattern changed. Amina's eyes snapped open at the sound. The cardiac monitor's rhythm stuttered, skipped, then accelerated into something irregular and dangerous. She was on her feet before conscious thought caught up, moving toward Rashid's gurney as alarms began to shriek. "He's in dangerous rhythm," the young nurse called out, her calm professionalism cracking around the edges. "Heart rate 200 and climbing." The prince's body had gone rigid, back arching off the gurney, his eyes rolled back showing whites. The purple staining on his arm seemed to pulse with his racing heartbeat. Darker now, almost black. This was it, the secondary wave, the organ damage phase that had killed Aisha. "Get the defibrillator ready," the head physician ordered, but Amina was already reaching for different supplies. "No," she grabbed the emergency medication kit, fingers flying through labeled vials. "Defibrillation will make it worse. The toxin makes his heart tissue hypersensitive to electrical current. We need calcium and magnesium, now." The physician hesitated only a second, then nodded. "Do it." Hamina's hands moved with certainty born from hundreds of hours reading case studies, memorizing protocols, imagining this exact scenario. She drew up both medications, checked dosages against Rashid's weight, rechecked them. No time for mistakes. The prince's lips were turning blue again, his small body convulsing as his heart tried to beat itself to death. Amir Tariq stood frozen by the wall, his face carved from ice. Amina recognized that expression too, the helpless terror of watching your child suffer while doctors work, the desperate prayer that someone, anyone, knows what they're doing. "This will stabilize his cardiac rhythm," Amina said, her voice steadier than her hands as she pushed the calcium into the IV line. "The toxin depletes electrolytes. His heart is firing chaotically because it doesn't have the minerals it needs for proper signaling." She followed immediately with the magnesium, watching the monitors with eyes that barely blinked. "Come on, work, please work. Not again, please not again." 5 seconds, 10, 15. The cardiac rhythm stuttered once more, then began to slow. The frantic 200 beats per minute dropped to 190, 180, 170. The irregular pattern smoothed out into something closer to normal. Not perfect, but sustainable. Rashid's body relaxed back onto the gurney, the convulsions easing. His breathing remained shallow and fast, but his lips were pinking up again. The crisis was passing. Amina's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the tile floor, adrenaline draining away and leaving her hollow. The young nurse crouched beside her immediately, concerned. "Are you okay? Do you need—" "I'm fine," Amina forced the words out. That was close." "That was extraordinary," the head physician corrected. He was looking at her with open respect now, all traces of his earlier dismissiveness gone. "I've been practicing medicine for 400 years. I would have used the defibrillator." would have killed him. Amina pulled herself together, standing on shaking legs. You didn't know about the cardiac hypersensitivity. It's only documented in 3 case studies, all of them published in obscure journals. I found them at 2 in the morning on a library computer 4 years ago. Amir Tariq crossed the room in 3 strides. Before Amina could react, he'd pulled her into an embrace that would have crushed a human without Jinn strength control. His shoulders shook once, twice. When he pulled back, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. Kings didn't cry, but fathers did. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for knowing what I couldn't, for being here when—" His voice broke. He glanced at his son, now sleeping peacefully despite everything his small body had endured. "When I almost lost him." "He's not out of danger yet," Amina said gently. "The next 12 hours are critical. His liver and kidneys could still fail. We need comprehensive testing, round-the-clock monitoring, and probably some medications I don't even know exist yet." "Then we move him to the Royal Medical Facility," Tariq decided. "Best equipment in the territory. You'll direct his care there." "Your Excellency, I really think a trained physician should—" "A trained physician would have defibrillated him." The emir's voice was soft but absolute. "You saved him twice tonight, once in the bathroom and once just now. I trust you with my son's life more than I trust anyone else in this room. No offense intended to my excellent medical staff." The head physician actually smiled slightly. "None taken, Your Excellency. Miss Hassan has earned that trust." He turned to Amina. "I'll assist in whatever capacity you need. Consider me your resource for Jinn-specific physiology questions, but the decisions should be yours." Amina looked around the bathroom that had become a battlefield. Medical equipment everywhere, the cleaning supplies she'd abandoned hours ago, still sitting by the sinks, the fluorescent lights that had witnessed everything from initial crisis to secondary wave to desperate save. This wasn't supposed to be her life. She was supposed to clean floors and empty trash bins and live quietly with her grief. Instead, she was standing in an emir's bathroom, being offered authority over a royal child's care. But when she looked at Rashid, sleeping peacefully despite everything his small body had endured, she saw Aisha, saw the child she couldn't save, saw the chance to turn knowledge born from tragedy into something that mattered. "Okay," Amina said finally. "I'll do it. But I need something in return." Tariq nodded immediately. "Anything." "Access to every medical database in the kingdom, every toxicology report, every case study, every piece of research on modified nightshade derivatives. Someone poisoned your son with a toxin that's killed before. That terrorist from 6 years ago, he's still out there, and if he tried once with a prince, he'll try again." The emir's expression went cold, dangerous. "You think this was targeted assassination?" "I think someone who knows how to make this specific poison put it somewhere your son would ingest it. That's not random chance. That's attempted murder. And if we don't figure out who and how, they'll try again." Amina met his eyes steadily. "I couldn't catch my daughter's killer, but maybe I can catch yours before he succeeds." The Royal Medical Facility occupied an entire floor of the emir's private residence. Amina had never seen anything like it. Equipment that looked like it belonged in science fiction novels, monitors with readouts she couldn't interpret without guidance, a sterile environment so pristine it made hospital operating rooms look dirty. They'd transferred Rashid by helicopter just as dawn broke, the early morning light painting the sky in shades of purple that reminded Amina uncomfortably of poison staining. The prince had remained stable during transport. No more cardiac episodes, no convulsions, but the blood work told a concerning story. His liver enzymes were elevated, kidney function was declining. The toxin had done damage that would take weeks or months to fully heal, if it healed at all. Amina sat beside his bed in the recovery suite, reviewing test results on a tablet someone had provided, trying to ignore the fact that her office was nicer than her entire apartment. "You should rest," said Dr. Khalil, the head physician from the bathroom, who had officially become her medical partner. He'd been nothing but gracious since she'd proven herself, patiently explaining Jinn physiology differences and helping her understand the test results through that lens. "You've been awake for 24 hours. Can't rest yet." Amina scrolled through another blood panel. "His kidney indicators are still climbing. If it doesn't stabilize in the next 6 hours, we're looking at acute kidney injury. I need to adjust his IV fluids, maybe add something to support renal function." "Already done," Khalil said, gesturing to the IV pole. "Increased the hydration rate and added protective compounds. Jinn-specific formula, but the principle is the same as human medicine." Amina nodded, relieved. She wasn't alone in this. Khalil had 4 centuries of experience. Together, they made a functional team. Her specialized knowledge of the toxin combined with his deep understanding of Jinn medicine. Aisha's death had taught her the human medical side. Khalil was teaching her everything else. "Miss Hassan?" A small voice from the bed. Rashid was awake, his dark eyes clear despite the pallor of his skin. "May I ask you something?" "Of course." Amina set down the tablet and moved closer. "And call me Amina, please. Miss Hassan makes me feel like I'm in trouble." The prince managed a weak smile. "My father said you lost your daughter to the same poison. Is that true?" Amina's chest tightened. She'd known this question would come eventually. "Yes, her name was Aisha. She was 7. "I'm 9, Rashid said quietly. "Was she sick before the poison?" "No, she was healthy and happy and full of energy. She loved dance class and strawberry ice cream and terrible jokes that made no sense." Amina found herself smiling despite the ache. "She would have liked you. I think you have kind eyes, like she did." Rashid processed this in silence for a moment. "Are you sad that you saved me instead of her?" The question hit like a physical blow. Amina had to take a breath before she could answer. "I'm sad that I couldn't save her. I'm grateful that I could save you. Both things are true at the same time. Does that make sense?" "I think so." The prince's small hand found hers. "Thank you for not letting me die, even though it must hurt to remember." "It hurts." Amina squeezed his hand gently. "But helping you hurts less than doing nothing would have. Sometimes the best way through grief is to make sure it means something, to use what we learned to help someone else." The door opened. Emir Tariq entered, followed by Layla Hassan carrying yet another tablet. The emir had changed from his blood-stained clothes into fresh, dark garments, but exhaustion showed in the set of his shoulders. He hadn't slept either, Amina realized. Probably spent the night making calls, coordinating security, trying to figure out who'd poisoned his son. "How is he?" Emir Tariq asked, his eyes going immediately to Rashid. "Stable, but not improved," Amina reported. "Liver and kidney function are still concerning. We're supporting both organs artificially while they heal. The cardiac rhythm is holding steady with medication." "Will he need the medication permanently?" "Too early to tell. Might be weeks or months, might be years. His heart took damage. Young Jinn physiology might heal it completely, or there might be scarring that requires long-term management." Amina met Biamir's eyes. "But he's alive. Yesterday, that wasn't guaranteed." Tariq moved to his son's bedside, one hand automatically checking his forehead for fever, despite the monitors that could tell him temperature more accurately. Security found where the poison was administered, his afternoon tea service. Someone replaced his regular tea blend with one laced with the toxin. "Who has access to his tea?" Amina asked immediately, her mind shifting into investigative mode. "That's the problem." Layla pulled up something on her tablet. 17 different staff members handle food preparation and delivery for the royal family. Any of them could have done it. We're running background checks, but so far, everyone's clean. "What about the tea itself? Where did it come from?" "The royal supplier, a company that's provided specialty blends to the family for 200 years. Tariq's jaw tightened. "The owner is being questioned now. Claims his facility is secure, that contamination is impossible. But someone got to that tea." Amina thought about Aisha's case, about the wine at the festival that killed her daughter. In Aisha's poisoning, they never found who made the toxin, but they traced components of it to 3 different suppliers. So whoever created this formula knows chemistry well enough to source ingredients that aren't obviously dangerous on their own. Only when combined in specific ratios do they become lethal. So we're looking for someone with advanced chemical knowledge, Layla noted, typing rapidly. That narrows the suspect pool. Not really, Amina said grimly. 6 years ago, they suspected dozens of people with the right expertise. Scientists, pharmacists, advanced students. The investigation went nowhere because the toxin can be made by anyone with the right training and access to basic chemistry equipment. Rashid had been listening quietly, his young face serious. Father, why would someone want to poison me? The question every parent dreads. Tariq sat on the edge of his bed, his ancient eyes meeting his young ones. Because I've made decisions as Amir that not everyone agrees with. Sometimes people try to hurt what we love most to punish us for those decisions. What decisions? Integration policies mostly. Tariq glanced at Amina, perhaps remembering she was human and one of the people his policies affected. I've been pushing for more equal treatment of humans in Jinn territories, better working conditions, legal protections, education access. Some of the old nobility think I'm giving away too much power, making the kingdom weak. Amina understood immediately. So poisoning your son is a message. Stop protecting humans or lose what matters most. That's the working theory. The Emir's expression went cold. But whoever sent that message is going to learn that threatening my child was the worst mistake of their long life. 3 days passed in a blur of medical monitoring and investigative dead ends. Prince Rashid's condition improved slowly, his young body fighting to repair the damage the toxin had inflicted. His liver enzymes began declining, trending back toward normal ranges. Kidney function stabilized, then started recovering. But the cardiac damage remained, requiring a steady IV drip of medications to keep his heart beating in proper rhythm. Amina rarely left his side. She slept in shifts on the suite's surprisingly comfortable couch, learning to read Jinn medical equipment the way she'd once learned to read Aisha's monitors. Dr. Khalil proved to be an excellent teacher, patiently explaining the differences between human and Jinn physiology. Jinn healed faster than humans, but were paradoxically more vulnerable to certain toxins. Their longer lives meant accumulated wisdom, but also accumulated enemies. Their enhanced senses meant they noticed subtle changes in their environment. Yet Rashid had drunk the poison tea without detecting it. Someone had masked the toxin well. The tea blend itself was a clever choice, Khalil explained one afternoon as they reviewed Rashid's Ratus blood panel. Strong flavors, complex spices, easy to hide a chemical signature in all that aromatic noise. Amina studied the prince, who was awake and reading a book propped against his raised knees. He looked better today, color returning to his cheeks. The purple staining had faded from his hands and arms, leaving only faint traces. But she could see the IV pole he was tethered to, the cardiac monitor blinking steadily, the fragile reality that this 9-year-old's body had survived something that should have killed him. Rashid, Amina said, an idea forming. Tell me about that day before you got sick. What do you remember? The prince set down his book, thinking. I had lessons in the morning, history with tutor Graves, mathematics with tutor Chen, then lunch with father in his study. What did you eat for lunch? Soup. Father always has soup. Rashid smiled slightly. He says it's efficient, can eat it while working. I think he just likes routine. And after lunch? I went to my chambers to read. One of the kitchen staff brought my afternoon tea around 3 o'clock, the usual blend. I drank half of a cup and then... His face went distant, remembering. Then my stomach started hurting. I thought maybe I'd eaten too fast at lunch. Went to father's private bathroom because it was closer than my own. That's where you found me. Amina exchanged glances with Khalil. Half a cup? That's a relatively small dose. If he drunk the full serving, he'd be dead, Khalil finished grimly, even with immediate treatment. The fact that he only ingested half of the poison is probably why the treatment had time to work. So, we're looking at someone who knew Rashid's tea schedule, had access to his chambers, and replaced his regular blends with the poisoned version. Amina ticked off the facts on her fingers. That's premeditated, carefully planned, and still ongoing. Tariq's voice came from the doorway. Security just reported another incident. The emir looked worse today, shadows under his eyes deepening. He'd been juggling royal duties while his son lay recovering, keeping the kingdom running while simultaneously trying to find a would-be assassin. The pastry chef's kitchen was broken into last night. Nothing taken, but they found traces of the same toxin compound in the ingredient storage area. Amina's blood ran cold. They're trying again, or testing security, seeing how close they can get. Tariq moved to his son's bedside automatically, checking vitals the way he had every time he entered the room, a parent's ritual. I've doubled the guards around the food preparation areas. Everything Rashid eats is now tested before it reaches him. Same for me and any other family members. That'll stop obvious poisoning attempts, Amina said slowly, but toxins can be delivered in other ways. Skin contact, inhalation, even absorbed through materials that touch food afterward. The emir's expression darkened. Then what do you suggest? Controlled environment. Rashid stays in this medical suite until we catch whoever's responsible. All food prepared in the room by trusted staff only. Air filtration increased, and someone, ideally me or Dr. Khalil, present for every meal. I'm not a prisoner, Rashid said quietly, not a protest, an observation, understanding already that safety sometimes meant restriction. Tariq knelt beside the bed, bringing himself to his son's eye level. You're not a prisoner. You're my son, and someone tried to kill you. Until we know who and why, I need you safe. Can you be patient with me? The prince nodded, but she saw the flash of something in his eyes. Fear, yes, but also frustration. He was 9 years old, trapped in a medical suite connected to an IV pole, his life reduced to blood tests and monitored meals. She understood that feeling. Aisha had spent her final days confined to a hospital room, the world shrinking to white walls and beeping machines. Hey, Amina said, moving to sit on the edge of the bed. I know this is hard. I know you want to run around and do normal kid things, but your body needs time to heal. And once it does, once you're stronger, you're going to have such an amazing story to tell. About being poisoned? Rashid's voice was skeptical. About surviving. About being so strong that poison couldn't keep you down. About having a dad who moved heaven and earth to keep you safe. Amina smiled. And about making friends with a cleaning lady who happened to know exactly the right things at exactly the right moment. That got a small smile from the prince. You're not a cleaning lady anymore. Father hired you as a medical consultant. Layla showed me the contract. True, but I'm still figuring out what that means. Amina glanced at Tariq, who was watching them with an unreadable expression. Your dad basically told me to name my price and keep you alive. That's a lot of pressure for someone who used to scrub toilets for a living. You're doing more than keeping him alive, Tariq said quietly. You're giving him hope, teaching him that surviving trauma means something, that the people who've suffered most sometimes understand healing best. The words hit deeper than Amina expected. She'd spent 6 years viewing herself as someone who'd failed to save Aisha, failed to catch the poisoner, failed to turn her knowledge into anything useful. But here, in this medical suite with this royal child who'd almost died, maybe she wasn't a failure. Maybe she was exactly what the situation needed. The investigation, Amina said, redirecting to safer territory. Where does it stand? Nowhere good, Layla said, appearing in the doorway with her ever-present tablet. Background checks on all 17 food service staff came back clean. No criminal records, no suspicious associations, no obvious motives. The tea supplier's facility was inspected top to bottom. No signs of contamination or security breaches. And the toxin itself? Layla paused, pulling up data. Analysis confirms it's the same formula used 6 years ago, exact chemical signature. Amina's heart skipped. The same formula? Not just similar. Identical, according to the forensic chemists. The realization came to Amina at 3 in the morning, when the medical suite was quiet except for the steady beep of cardiac monitors and Rashid's soft breathing. She'd been reviewing the original case files from Aisha's poisoning, documents she'd requested through Layla's frighteningly efficient information network, comparing them to the forensic reports from Rashid's tea, looking for patterns, looking for anything that might connect 6 years ago to 3 days ago. And there it was, hidden in the supply chain analysis. One ingredient in the toxin's formula, a specific alkaloid derived from a rare mountain flower, came from only 2 known suppliers. 6 years ago, one of those suppliers had sold a large quantity to a research facility studying antidotes for agricultural poisons. Nothing suspicious. The facility's credentials had checked out. The order seemed legitimate. But that facility had closed 2 years ago, been bought out by a larger pharmaceutical company. And that pharmaceutical company supplied specialized ingredients to the royal tea blender. Amina sat up straight, her pulse accelerating. She pulled up the pharmaceutical company's records, cross-referencing employees against the research facility's former staff. And there, buried in HR files, was a name that appeared in both places. Dr. Yusuf Mansour, chief chemist at the research facility, now senior ingredient sourcing specialist at the pharmaceutical company. Mansour, the same surname as... Amina's blood turned to ice. She pulled up the original investigation files, searching for something she hadn't thought about in years, the list of people interviewed after Aisha's death. There on page 47, a witness statement from a visiting researcher at the local medical clinic, someone who'd been in the village during the festival, someone who'd left the day after Aisha died, before follow-up interviews could be conducted. Dr. Yusuf Mansour. Her hand shook as she searched for more information, found an old photograph from the research facility's website, cached before the closure, a man in his 40s, human, with sandy hair and a forgettable face, the kind of person who could blend into crowds, go unnoticed, slip poison into wine at a festival, or tea blend in a royal kitchen. The kind of person who might share a surname with his victim. Amina pulled up family records, her heart hammering against her ribs, traced her family tree back 3 generations, found what she was looking for, and simultaneously hoped she wouldn't find. Yusuf Mansour, her second cousin, family she'd never met, related through her father's branch that had moved away decades ago, a connection so distant she'd never thought to mention it during the investigation. But he'd been there, at the festival in the village, the day Aisha died. Amina stood on shaking legs and moved to the window. Dawn was breaking, painting the sky in golds and pinks that seemed obscene given what she'd just discovered. Her cousin, a man who shared her blood. Had he targeted Aisha specifically because she was family? Some twisted revenge against her father who testified against Yusuf's father in a property dispute 30 years ago? Or had Aisha just been in the wrong place at the wrong time? And now, he was working for the pharmaceutical company that supplied ingredients to the royal tea blender. Amina sat up straight, her pulse accelerating. She pulled up the pharmaceutical company's records, cross-referencing employees against the research facility's former staff. And there, buried in HR files, was a name that appeared in both places. Dr. Yusuf Mansour, chief chemist at the research facility, now senior ingredient sourcing specialist at the pharmaceutical company. Mansour, the same surname as Amina's blood turned to ice. She pulled up the original investigation files, searching for something she hadn't thought about in years: the list of people interviewed after Aisha's death. There, on page 47, a witness statement from a visiting researcher at the local medical clinic, someone who'd been in the village during the festival, someone who'd left the day after Aisha died, before follow-up interviews could be conducted. Dr. Yusuf Mansour. Her hand shook as she searched for more information. Found an old photograph from the research facility's website, cached before the closure. A man in his 40s, human, with sandy hair and a forgettable face. The kind of person who could blend into crowds, go unnoticed, slip poison into wine at a festival, or tea blend in a royal kitchen. The kind of person who might share a surname with his victim. Amina pulled up family records, her heart hammering against her ribs, traced her family tree back 3 generations, found what she was looking for, and simultaneously hoped she wouldn't find. Yusuf Mansour, her second cousin, family she'd never met, related through her father's branch that had moved away decades ago, a connection so distant she'd never thought to mention it during the investigation. But he'd been there, at the festival in the village, the day Aisha died. Amina stood on shaking legs and moved to the window. Dawn was breaking, painting the sky in golds and pinks that seemed obscene given what she'd just discovered. Her cousin, a man who shared her blood. Had he targeted Aisha specifically because she was family? Some twisted revenge against her father, who testified against Yusuf's father in a property dispute 30 years ago? Or had Aisha just been in the wrong place at the wrong time? And now, he was working for the pharmaceutical company that supplied ingredients to the royal tea blender. Amina sat up straight, her pulse accelerating. She pulled up the pharmaceutical company's records, cross-referencing employees against the research facility's former staff, and there, buried in HR files, was a name that appeared in both places: Dr. Yusuf Mansour, chief chemist at the research facility, now senior ingredient sourcing specialist at the pharmaceutical company. Mansour, the same surname as Amina's blood turned to ice. She pulled up the original investigation files, searching for something she hadn't thought about in years: the list of people interviewed after Aisha's death. There, on page 47, a witness statement from a visiting researcher at the local medical clinic, someone who'd been in the village during the festival, someone who'd left the day after Aisha died, before follow-up interviews could be conducted. Dr. Yusuf Mansour. Her hand shook as she searched for more information. Found an old photograph from the research facility's website, cached before the closure. A man in his 40s, human, with sandy hair and a forgettable face, the kind of person who could blend into crowds, go unnoticed, slip poison into wine at a festival, or tea blend in a royal kitchen. The kind of person who might share a surname with his victim. Amina pulled up family records, her heart hammering against her ribs, traced her family tree back 3 generations, found what she was looking for, and simultaneously hoped she wouldn't find. Yusuf Mansour, her second cousin, family she'd never met, related through her father's branch that had moved away decades ago, a connection so distant she'd never thought to mention it during the investigation. But he'd been there, at the festival in the village, the day Aisha died. Amina stood on shaking legs and moved to the window. Dawn was breaking, painting the sky in golds and pinks that seemed obscene given what she'd just discovered. Her cousin, a man who shared her blood. Had he targeted Aisha specifically because she was family? Some twisted revenge against her father, who testified against Yusuf's father in a property dispute 30 years ago? Or had Aisha just been in the wrong place at the wrong time? And now, he was working for the pharmaceutical company that supplied ingredients to the royal tea blender. Amina sat up straight, her pulse accelerating. She pulled up the pharmaceutical company's records, cross-referencing employees against the research facility's former staff, and there, buried in HR files, was a name that appeared in both places. Dr. Yusuf Mansour, chief chemist at the research facility, now senior ingredient sourcing specialist at the pharmaceutical company. Mansour, the same surname as Amina's blood turned to ice. She pulled up the original investigation files, searching for something she hadn't thought about in years, the list of people interviewed after Aisha's death. There on page 47, a witness statement from a visiting researcher at the local medical clinic, someone who'd been in the village during the festival, someone who'd left the day after Aisha died, before follow-up interviews could be conducted. Dr. Yusuf Mansour. Her hand shook as she searched for more information, found an old photograph from the research facility's website, cached before the closure, a man in his 40s, human, with sandy hair and a forgettable face, the kind of person who could blend into crowds, go unnoticed, slip poison into wine at a festival, or tea blend in a royal kitchen, the kind of person who might share a surname with his victim. The arrest happened so quickly that Amina almost missed it. One moment she was showing Lila and the Amir's security team the connections she'd found. The next moment, tactical units were mobilizing across the city. Dr. Yusuf Mansour was taken into custody at his apartment at 7:15 that morning, still in pajamas, before he'd had time to destroy evidence or flee. Amina watched the security footage from the medical suite, Rashid beside her on the bed, Tariq standing behind them with arms crossed. The video showed Mansour looking confused as armed guards burst through his door, then terrified as he realized what was happening. But not surprised, not innocent. There was a moment, just a flicker, where his expression shifted into something almost like resignation, like he'd been expecting this eventually. "They're bringing him to the palace for questioning," Lila reported, phone pressed to her ear. "Estimated arrival 30 minutes. Your Excellency, do you want to observe the interrogation?" "I want to conduct it," Tariq said flatly, "but my advisors will remind me that's inappropriate. So, yes, I'll observe." His hand found Amina's shoulder. "You should be there too. You understand this toxin better than anyone. You might catch something we'd miss." Amina hadn't expected that. "I'm not trained in interrogations." "You're trained in seeing patterns and understanding how this poison works, and you have a personal stake in this." The Emir's eyes met hers. "He killed your daughter. You deserve to look him in the face and know whether we have the right man." They moved Rashid to a secure section of the medical suite, Dr. Khalil staying with him along with 4 guards. The prince wasn't happy about being left behind, but he understood. This wasn't something a 9-year-old needed to witness. Whatever happened in that interrogation room would be ugly. The observation room was smaller than Amina expected. One-way glass looking into a sparse chamber, metal table, 2 chairs, recording equipment visible in the corners. Very different from the hospital interrogation rooms she'd seen on television, but the purpose was the same. Extract truth, determine guilt, decide consequences. Yusuf Mansour was brought in 10 minutes later. He looked smaller in person than in his photograph, diminished somehow. Sandy hair unwashed and thinning, face pale with fear, hands cuffed in front of him, shaking slightly. He sat when directed, eyes darting around the room, looking for cameras, exits, anything that might offer escape or explanation. The interrogator was a Jinn woman with silver hair and an expression that suggested she'd done this for centuries. She sat across from Yusuf and said nothing for a full minute, just staring at him with eyes that missed nothing, letting the silence build, letting fear do its work. "Do you know why you're here, Dr. Mansour?" she finally asked, her voice calm and almost gentle. "No." Too quick, too defensive. "I haven't done anything wrong." "You work for Silvercrest Pharmaceuticals. You source specialty ingredients for medical and culinary applications, is that correct? Yes, but and before that, you worked at the Riverside Research Facility studying agricultural antidotes, specifically antidotes for plant-based toxins. Yusuf shifted in his seat. That facility closed 2 years ago. I moved to Silvercrest because I needed employment. Convenient timing. The interrogator pulled out a folder, opening it slowly. The Riverside facility acquired a large quantity of mountain nightshade alkaloids in their final year of operation. Do you remember that purchase? No. The facility handled dozens of compounds. I can't recall every. You authorized the purchase. Your signature is on the requisition form. She slid a document across the table. And curiously, much more was ordered than was actually used in research, almost twice as much. Where did the excess go? I don't know. Supply errors happen. Maybe it was returned to the vendor. It wasn't. Another document. We checked. The vendor has no record of returns, so either the facility used all of it, which their research logs say they didn't, or someone took it when the facility closed. Amina watched Yusuf's face, seeing the tells, the way his eyes wouldn't quite meet the interrogator's eyes, the slight twitch at the corner of his mouth, the way his hands clenched and unclenched. He was guilty. She could see it in every micro-expression. Let's talk about 6 years ago, the interrogator continued, her voice calm and almost gentle. You were in the eastern villages during the autumn festival, the same festival where a 7-year-old named Aisha Hassan was poisoned with a modified nightshade toxin, the same toxin that traces back to compounds you had access to. Yusuf went very still. That was investigated. I gave a statement. I was cleared. You left town before follow-up interviews could be conducted. Very convenient. I had to get back to work. I couldn't afford. Aisha Hassan was your cousin, the interrogator said softly, delivering the blow with surgical precision. Second cousin. True, but family. Did you know that when you poisoned her? Or was it just bad luck that your test run happened to kill a family member? Yusuf's face went white. I didn't. I never. We found the toxin in your apartment, Dr. Mansour, in a locked safe in your bedroom, enough to poison a dozen people. We also found detailed notes on jinn physiology, royal schedules, and security protocols. You want to keep claiming this is a coincidence? The silence stretched. Amina watched Yusuf crumble in real time, shoulders sagging, eyes squeezing shut. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. I didn't mean for the child to die. Amina's breath stopped. Beside her, she felt Tariq go rigid, fury radiating off him in waves. Explain, the interrogator commanded. The wine at the festival. It was meant for Lord Kareem. He'd shut down my research funding, claimed my work was too dangerous. I just wanted to make him sick, just wanted to scare him. Yusuf's voice broke. But the girl, she grabbed the wrong glass, and by the time I realized, it was too late. So you ran. I left. What could I do? Confessing wouldn't bring her back, and I'd already done the damage. Yusuf looked up, and Amina saw tears on his face. I thought about turning myself in every day for 6 years, but I had other research, important work. I convinced myself it was an accident, that I could make up for it by saving other lives. By poisoning a 9-year-old prince? The interrogator's voice dripped contempt. That was different, Yusuf's voice hardened. That was intentional. The Emir's integration policies are destroying our society, giving humans equal rights, equal power. It's an abomination. Someone had to stop him. And there it was, the real motive. Not just a test gone wrong, but ideology. Belief that humans were lesser, that protecting them was weakness, that killing a child was justified if it stopped political change. Amina had heard enough. She stood. moving to the door before she consciously decided to do it. Tariq tried to stop her, hand on her arm, but she shook him off. She needed to face this man, needed him to see her, needed him to understand what he'd taken. The interrogation room door opened. Yusuf looked up, confused, as Amina entered. The interrogator started to protest, but a gesture from someone, probably Tariq through an earpiece, silenced her. Amina stood across the table from her second cousin, from the man who'd killed her daughter and then tried to kill another child. She didn't trust herself to speak immediately, just stared at him, letting him see her face, her pain, her fury. "You don't remember me," she said finally. "Aisha's mother, the woman who watched her daughter die from your test run. But I remember you. You came to the hospital, offered condolences, told me how sorry you were. And all along, you knew. You knew what you'd done." Yusuf couldn't meet his eyes. "I'm sorry. I truly am. It wasn't supposed to—" "Don't." Amina's voice cracked like a whip. "Don't you dare apologize to me now. You had 6 years to confess, to face justice, to at least give me the truth. Instead, you hid, and when hiding wasn't enough, you tried to kill another child to further your twisted politics. The Emir's policies don't matter." Amina slammed her hands on the table, leaning forward. "You murdered a 7-year-old girl. You attempted to murder a 9-year-old boy, and you're trying to justify it with politics? With some belief that humans don't deserve equality?" She pulled back, breathing hard. "You know what Aisha's last words were? She asked me why everything hurt. She was 7 years old, dying from poison, and she didn't understand why. And you know what Rashid asked me? After I saved him, he asked if I was sad that I saved him instead of her." Yusuf flinched. "You created that question. You put that thought in a child's head. You made me choose between grief and action, between remembering my daughter and saving someone else's son." Amina's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "I hope that haunts you. I hope every moment of whatever's left of your miserable life, you remember the children you hurt, and I hope it's agony." She turned and left before the tears could fall, before the rage could consume her completely. Behind her, she heard Yusuf starting to speak again, making excuses, trying to explain, but she was done listening. Justice would happen with or without her presence. In the hallway, Tariq caught up with her, said nothing, just pulled her into an embrace while she finally let herself break. 6 years of grief, 3 days of terror, the awful relief of knowing who was responsible, and the equally awful knowledge that it changed nothing. Aisha was still gone, Yusuf would face punishment, and Amina would still wake up every day with a daughter-sized hole in her life. But she'd saved Rashid. That mattered. That had to be enough. The trial happened swiftly by Jinn standards, which meant weeks instead of decades. Yusuf Mansour confessed to everything under continued interrogation. The modified nightshade toxin, Aisha's death, the attempted assassination of Prince Rashid. His motives, a toxic mix of political extremism and scientific arrogance, were laid bare in testimony that made Amina physically ill to read. He'd convinced himself that his research justified any casualties, that the humans killed were acceptable losses in pursuit of what he considered greater truths about natural hierarchies and jinn supremacy. The jinn court found him guilty on all counts. The sentence was execution, to be carried out according to ancient laws that Amina didn't ask about and didn't want to know. Justice would be served. But as she'd told Rashid, justice didn't heal the wounds. It just made sure the bleeding stopped. During those weeks, something shifted in the palace. Rashid grew stronger, his body healing with the remarkable resilience of jinn youth. His liver enzymes returned to normal, kidney function fully recovered, but the cardiac damage remained, requiring daily medication and regular monitoring. Dr. Khalil explained it would likely be permanent, a physical reminder of how close death had come. But Rashid bore it with a grace that made Amina's heart ache. 9 years old and already learning that trauma leaves scars. Amina officially moved into the palace, given quarters near the medical suite so she could be available for Rashid's care. The cleaning crew she'd once worked with threw her a small party, amused and proud that one of their own had become a royal medical consultant. She still felt like an imposter sometimes, wearing nice clothes instead of her uniform, eating in palace dining rooms instead of the staff cafeteria. But when she was with Rashid, reviewing his medication schedule or explaining his test results in simple terms he could understand, she felt right, felt like she was exactly where she needed to be. Amir Tariq changed too. The distant, intimidating figure from official portraits became someone more human, or at least more present. He spent hours in the medical suite, learning his son's medication routines, asking Amina to teach him how to read the cardiac monitors, how to recognize warning signs of complications. Father and son grew closer in the aftermath of a crisis, the way trauma sometimes forces people to either fracture completely or fuse together stronger. One evening, 3 weeks after the poisoning, Amina found them in the medical suite engaged in what looked like an intense game of chess. Rashid was winning, a small smile on his face as he contemplated his next move. Tariq looked both frustrated and delighted, clearly outmatched by his 9-year-old son's strategic thinking. "He's hustling you," Amina observed, settling into her usual chair. "Been studying chess strategy while pretending to read novels." "Traitor," Rashid said cheerfully, moving his knight. "Checkmate in 3." Tariq studied the board, found no escape, and laughed. Actually laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "When did you get so devious?" "I'm a prince who survived assassination. Devious is probably required." Rashid's tone was light, but Amina heard the edge beneath it, the awareness that his life had fundamentally changed, that the innocent childhood he'd been living before the poisoning was over. The emir heard it too. His expression softened. "You know this isn't normal, right? What you've been through, what you're dealing with. Most children don't have to think about poison protocols and cardiac medications." "Most children have boring lives." Rashid reset the chessboard, already preparing for another game. "I have Amina teaching me toxicology, and you finally paying attention. Seems like a fair trade?" The comment landed harder than the prince probably intended. Tariq went very still, and Amina saw the flash of guilt across his face. She'd noticed it over the past few weeks, the emir's growing awareness that he'd been absent in his son's life before the crisis. Too busy ruling, too focused on politics and policies and the endless demands of leadership. It had taken nearly losing Rashid to make Tariq realize what he'd been missing. "I haven't been a very good father, have I?" The emir's voice was quiet. "You're a good emir," Rashid replied, not looking up from arranging chess pieces. "Everyone says so. The integration policies, the economic reforms, the peace treaties. You've done important things. But I missed your 9th birthday. Forgot you had that school presentation last month. Didn't know your favorite color had changed from blue to green until the nurses mentioned it." Tariq listed the failures with the precision of someone who'd been cataloging them. "I let being emir become more important than being your father." "You're here now." Rashid met his eyes finally. "That's what matters, right? Amina says healing happens in the present, not the past." Both of them looked at Amina, who suddenly felt like she'd been dropped into a family therapy session she wasn't qualified to moderate. "I mean, yes, you can't change what happened. You can only decide what to do from this moment forward." "Wise words from the woman who turned tragedy into expertise," Tariq said with a slight smile. Then more seriously, "I want to do better, want to be present, but I don't know how to balance ruling a kingdom with being the father Rashid deserves."
Maybe you don't have to balance it perfectly. Maybe you just have to try. Show up when you can. Let him see that he matters even when everything else is demanding your attention. And teach me things, Rashid added, like chess or politics or whatever Amirs know. I'm going to rule someday, right? Might as well learn from the best. The conversation shifted then, father and son discussing what lessons might look like, what time they could carve out together. Amina watched them negotiate this new relationship, building something stronger from the pieces of what had almost been lost. It reminded her of her own relationship with Aisha, the way tragedy clarified what really mattered, even if the clarification came too late. Later, after Rashid had fallen asleep with a book on his chest and Tariq had reluctantly left for a council meeting, Amina sat in the quiet medical suite, doing what she always did in quiet moments. She thought about Aisha, imagined what she would be now, 12 years old, middle school, growing into whoever she was meant to become. All those futures lost to one man's arrogance and a glass of poisoned wine. But for the first time in 6 years, the thoughts didn't crush her, didn't leave her hollow and broken. Instead, they coexisted with other thoughts. Rashid alive, the toxins formula now in the hands of researchers working on better antidotes, Yusuf Mansour caught and punished. Small victories built from immense loss. I hope you'd be proud, Amina whispered to the empty room, to the daughter who couldn't hear her anymore. I hope wherever you are, you know that what happened to you helped save someone else, that your death meant something more than just grief. No answer came. There never was one. But Amina felt something settle in her chest anyway. Not peace, she wasn't sure she'd ever have that, but purpose, direction, the sense that she was exactly where she needed to be, doing exactly what she was meant to be doing. Tomorrow, Rashid would have his first public appearance since the poisoning, a carefully controlled event where the kingdom would see their prince alive and recovering, where Tariq would announce new security measures and anti-terrorism initiatives, where Amina would stand in the background, no longer a cleaning woman, not quite royalty, but something in between. A bridge built from tragedy, a healer forged in grief, someone who understood that the worst moments of life could sometimes lead to the most important work.
The palace balcony overlooked the central square where thousands had gathered. Amina stood slightly behind Rashid and Emir Tariq, close enough to intervene if the prince showed any signs of medical distress, far enough back to not be part of the formal proceedings. She wore clothes Lila had selected, professional but not ostentatious, the kind of outfit that said medical consultant without overshadowing the royal family. Her heart hammered as she watched the crowd, aware that this was Rashid's first public appearance since nearly dying, aware that the kingdom would judge whether their prince was truly recovering or still fragile. Rashid stood straight despite the cardiac monitor hidden beneath his formal jacket, despite the medication regimen keeping his heart beating properly, despite being 9 years old and terrified. Amina could see it in the slight tremor of his hands, quickly controlled, in the way his eyes swept the crowd, perhaps looking for threats now instead of friendly faces. Trauma changed how you saw the world, made you wary in ways you'd never been before. Tariq stepped forward to the balcony's edge, his voice amplified by technology Amina didn't understand. Citizens of the realm, he began, his tone carrying the weight of centuries. 3 weeks ago, someone attempted to murder my son, to strike at the heart of this kingdom through a child, to send a message that change would not be tolerated, that progress would be punished, that those who push for equality would lose what they love most. The crowd was silent, listening with an intensity that Amina could feel even from the balcony. That person failed. Tariq's hand found Rashid's shoulder. Prince Rashid survived because of quick action, expert care, and the kind of knowledge that comes from surviving tragedy. He survived because a cleaning woman working the night shift had learned everything about this specific poison after it killed her daughters 6 years ago. He survived because she refused to let another child die if she could prevent it. Amina felt hundreds of eyes turn toward her, heard murmurs rippling through the crowd. She wanted to disappear, to step back into the shadows where she belonged. But Tariq gestured for her to come forward, and royal gestures weren't really optional. She moved to stand beside Rashid. The prince immediately found her hand and squeezed it, anchoring himself, using her presence as support the way he had in that bathroom 3 weeks ago. Amina Hassan lost her daughter Aisha to the same poison that nearly took my son. Tariq's voice carried across the square. Instead of letting that loss destroy her, she turned it into expertise. She studied, she learned, she made sure that if she ever encountered this toxin again, she would know exactly what to do. And when that moment came, she saved Rashid's life. The crowd erupted in applause. Amina felt her face flush, tears pricking her eyes. This wasn't what she'd expected, wasn't what she'd wanted. She'd saved Rashid because she couldn't bear to let another child die, not because she wanted recognition or praise. But Tariq wasn't finished. Today, I'm announcing several initiatives in honor of both Aisha Hassan and the woman who saved my son. First, the establishment of Aisha Hassan Institute for Toxicology Research, a fully funded facility dedicated to studying poisons, developing antidotes, and ensuring that rare toxins like the one that killed Aisha never claim another life due to lack of knowledge. More applause. Amina's throat tightened. A research institute in Aisha's name. Her daughter's death would contribute to saving others. It wouldn't bring Aisha back, but it meant something, meant she existed, meant her loss had purpose. Second, the Emir continued, I'm mandating that all palace medical staff receive training in rare toxin protocols. Amina Hassan will lead this training, sharing her expertise so that others can act quickly when faced with similar emergencies. Amina hadn't known about this, hadn't agreed to it, but as she looked at Rashid beside her, at his small hands still gripping hers, she realized she would do it anyway, would teach everything she knew so that no other parent had to watch their child die while doctors struggled to identify the poison. And finally, Tariq's voice dropped, became more personal despite the crowd. I'm acknowledging a truth that this kingdom has ignored for too long. The most valuable knowledge doesn't always come from those with the highest positions or the longest education or the most prestigious credentials. Sometimes it comes from people working night shifts, scrubbing floors, living quiet lives. Sometimes the person who saves the prince is the person we'd normally overlook completely. He turned to face Amina directly. You've taught me that every person in this kingdom has value, that the cleaning woman might be the expert we need in a crisis, that grief, properly directed, becomes wisdom, that the humans I've been trying to protect have strengths and knowledge that jinn need to acknowledge and respect. The crowd's response was mixed now, enthusiastic applause from some, uncertain murmurs from others. Not everyone agreed with integration policies, not everyone believed humans deserved equal status, but Tariq was using his son's near death as a teaching moment, showing concretely why those policies mattered. Rashid stepped forward then, surprising everyone. His small voice carried clearly, amplified by the technology that carried his father's words. Amina saved my life, he said simply. She did what trained doctors couldn't do because she'd survived something terrible and learned from it. She's teaching me about healing, about how the worst things can make you stronger if you let them, about how knowledge from pain matters. The prince looked out at the crowd with a seriousness beyond his years. I'm going to need heart medication for the rest of my life because of what happened. I'm going to have scars from this, but I'm alive. And I'm going to remember that I'm alive because someone I would never have met, someone who worked in this palace but wasn't part of my world, had knowledge that mattered more than anything. More applause, this time universal.
Even those who disagreed with integration policies couldn't argue with a child who nearly died, couldn't dismiss the clear evidence that Amina's expertise had saved a royal life. The formal speeches concluded. The royal family retreated from the balcony, Amina following them into the palace's interior. Once out of public view, Tariq turned to Amina. "I should have warned you about the announcements, but I was afraid you'd refuse if I asked first." He was right. She would have. A research institute, training programs, that's huge. "It's necessary." The emir's expression was serious. "The person who poisoned Rashid is being executed tomorrow, but the toxin formula still exists. Others might try to use it. We need to be prepared, and that means sharing your knowledge as widely as possible." Amina understood the logic, but felt overwhelmed. Anyway, she'd spent 6 years living small, working quietly, trying to exist without drawing attention. Now she was standing at the center of palace politics, her daughter's name attached to a research institute, her expertise suddenly valuable to an entire kingdom. "I'll do it," I heard myself say. "The training, the research, whatever helps prevent this from happening again." "Thank you." Tariq glanced at his son, who was leaning against a wall, exhausted from the public appearance. "And thank you for helping me understand what really matters. I almost lost him because I was too busy being Amir to be his father. I won't make that mistake again." Rashid smiled slightly. "You're doing better, still have room for improvement, but better." The Emir laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "Brutally honest. Where did you learn that?" "From Amina. She says honesty is the only way through grief." The prince pushed off the wall, moving toward the medical suite. "Can we check my vitals? All that standing made my chest feel weird." Amina followed immediately, slipping back into her primary role, not public figure or integration symbol or grief counselor, just the person who understood Rashid's condition better than anyone else, the person who saved him and would continue protecting him through every stage of recovery. As they walked through palace corridors, she thought about Aisha, about how strange it was that losing her daughter had led to this moment, these relationships, this purpose. She would give anything to have Aisha back, to trade all of this for one more day with her child. But that wasn't an option. The only choice was whether to let grief destroy her or transform her. She'd chosen transformation, and somehow, impossibly, it was leading toward healing. 6 months later, Amina stood in the newly completed Aisha Hassan Institute for Toxicology Research and felt her daughter's presence more strongly than she had since the funeral. The building was beautiful, glass and steel designed to look like a flower opening toward the sun, Aisha's favorite metaphor for hope. Inside, state-of-the-art laboratories hummed with activity. Researchers from across the kingdom worked on antidote development, poison identification systems, emergency treatment protocols. Everything Amina had wished existed 6 years ago when Aisha lay dying. The official dedication ceremony had happened yesterday, attended by royalty and dignitaries and medical professionals from a dozen territories. But today was quieter. Just Amina wandering through hallways named for children lost to poison, looking at research stations developing treatments that might have saved her daughter. She would have loved this. Emir Tariq's voice came from behind her. He'd developed a habit of appearing quietly, checking on her during moments he suspected might be difficult. The flower design, the focus on hope alongside the science. She would have tried to name all the plants in the courtyard. Amina smiled. Aisha collected flowers, pressed them in books, knew all their scientific names even though she was 7. They walked together through the main laboratory where a team was currently analyzing a new toxin variant that had appeared in the Southern Territories. Thanks to the Research Institute's rapid response protocols and the training Amina had implemented across palace medical staff, the poison had been identified within hours instead of days. 3 potential victims had survived because medical professionals knew what they were dealing with. 3 lives saved because Aisha had died.
The math was terrible, but it was something. Rashid wants to volunteer here when he's older, thinks he should understand toxicology since he survived poisoning. I tried to explain that's not really how career planning works, but he's insistent. Amina laughed softly. He's remarkably stubborn for a 9-year-old. Wonder where he gets that? Can't imagine. The Emir's tone was dry. They developed an easy rapport over the past months, the kind of comfortable relationship that forms between people who've survived crisis together. Not quite friendship. He was still an Emir, and she was still technically his employee, but something close. They reached the memorial garden at the Institute Center, a circular space with a fountain at its heart, surrounded by flowers that bloomed year-round through careful climate control. Plaques lined the walls, bearing names of those lost to poison. Aisha's was the first, positioned prominently near the entrance. Aisha Hassan, age 7. Her death taught us to be ready. Her memory inspires us to save others. Amina touched the plaque gently, the cool metal familiar under her fingers. She visited often enough that the gesture had become ritual. I used to think I failed her, that if I'd been smarter, faster, better educated, I could have saved her. And now, she paused. Now I know that some things are beyond anyone's control. The poison worked too fast. The doctors didn't have the right information. I wasn't equipped with the knowledge I needed yet. She turned away from the plaque. I failed, but it wasn't my fault. There's a difference. Emir Tariq nodded. I'm still learning that lesson, still working through the guilt of almost losing Rashid because I was too focused on kingdom business to notice he was vulnerable. But you didn't lose him. He's thriving. Actually, Dr. Khalil says his cardiac function has improved more than expected, might even be able to reduce his medications next year. Thanks to your monitoring and care, the Emir's expression turned serious. I mean that. You've given me back my son in more ways than just saving his life. You've taught me how to be present for him, how to balance being a ruler with being a father, how to make the people around me feel seen instead of just managed. Amina felt uncomfortable with the praise. I just did what needed doing. Which is exactly what makes you remarkable. You don't seek recognition or reward. You just see what's necessary and do it. Tariq gestured around the institute. This entire place exists because you turned personal tragedy into public good. That's extraordinary. They left the memorial garden and headed toward the institute's teaching wing, where Amina would be conducting another training session later that day. The Jinn medical professionals who'd initially dismissed her expertise now hung on her every word during lectures. She'd become the kingdom's foremost authority on rare toxins, publishing research papers, consulting on cases, teaching the protocols that might save the next victim. Aisha's death gave Amina expertise. Rashid's survival gave her purpose. Together, they transformed her from invisible cleaning woman to someone whose knowledge mattered, someone whose voice carried weight, someone who could make sure the lessons learned from 2 poisoned children would protect countless others. At the institute entrance, they found Rashid waiting in the courtyard. He was supposed to be in tutoring sessions, but he'd developed a habit of sneaking out to visit the institute, watching research in progress, asking researchers about their work, learning everything he could about the poison that nearly killed him. Caught, he said cheerfully when he spotted them. But in my defense, my math tutor was explaining compound interest, and the antivenom development team was testing a neutralizing agent for snake toxins. Easy choice. You know your father is going to have words with security about this, Amina said, trying to sound stern and failing completely. She could never quite manage stern with Rashid. He'd survived too much for her to be angry about minor rule breaking. Already did. They've been instructed to let him visit supervised, Tariq said with a sigh. Apparently, my son's interest in toxicology is educational and should be encouraged, according to the head of security, whom you've thoroughly charmed. Rashid grinned. I'm a prince. Charming is literally in the description.
The three of them sat in the courtyard watching researchers move between buildings, watching flowers bloom in the carefully tended gardens, watching this place of healing and hope that had grown from tragedy. Amina thought about Aisha, as she did every day, but the thoughts didn't hurt quite as badly anymore. They'd softened around the edges, transformed from sharp grief into something closer to bittersweet memory. "Do you think she'd forgive me?" Amina asked suddenly, surprising herself. "For moving on? For being happy sometimes? For caring about you so much?" The last part was directed at Rashid, who looked up serious eyes. "I think she'd want you to be happy," the prince said simply. "Isn't that what parents want for their kids? For them to be happy and safe and loved?" "Yes," Amina's voice cracked. "That's exactly what we want. Then it works both ways, right? Kids want their parents to be happy too, even when they're gone." Rashid leaned against Amina's shoulder the way he often did when we watched his cardiac monitors together. Comfortable, trusting. "You saved me because you loved Aisha enough to learn everything you could. That's not moving on, that's honoring her." Out of the mouth of 9-year-olds. Amina wrapped an arm around Rashid's shoulder, pulling him close. This child who wasn't hers, but somehow became hers anyway. This prince who survived poison and trauma and came out the other side kinder, wiser, more aware of how fragile life could be. "She would have liked you," Amina said, repeating words she'd said before but meaning them more deeply now. "Would have got you were smart and funny and brave." "I wish I could have met her." Rashid's voice was quiet. "I wish she was still here." "Me too. Every single day." Amina looked up at the institute bearing her daughter's name. "But she's here in a different way. In this building, in the research happening inside, in every person who survives poison because we were prepared this time. That's not the same as having her alive, but it matters." Emir Tariq stood, offering his hand to help them both up. "Come on, you have a training session in an hour, and Rashid has tutoring he's skipping. We should all probably return to our responsibilities before someone notices we've been sitting in a garden having philosophical discussions when work needs doing." They walked back toward the palace together, a strange little family formed from tragedy and survival. A grieving mother who'd become a medical consultant, a Jinn emir learning to be a father, a poisoned prince who survived that meant carrying scars, but also carrying wisdom. Behind them, the Aisha Hassan Institute stood as testament to transformation, to the idea that the worst moments could become catalysts for the best work, that losing someone you loved didn't mean their life was wasted, that grief, properly directed, could save lives instead of destroying them. Amina thought she heard Aisha's laugh in the fountain splash,